Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network.
'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of hell.
A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UBNradio.com.
Welcome to Foster, and now here's your host, Dr. Anissa McNeil.
Hi, good morning. My name is Dr. Anissa McNeil, and welcome to the Foster to Foster radio show. I'm here in studio today with Mr. Alan Smith of Saving Innocence. Welcome this morning, Alan.
Well, thank you. It's great to be back.
Yes, it's wonderful to have you back on the show. And also joining us live this morning is Amy Brasher.
Good morning. Nice to be back again.
Yes, it's so nice to have you both back. And we're here this morning for one thing only, and that is to discuss how foster youth are lured into this horror of sex trafficking and what we can do to, one, help the foster youth, and two, help our community. How do you get involved? How do you help this atrocity stop? Because it is really wreaking havoc in the lives of not only foster youth, but youth all over the world. So I want to talk about a little bit. I start every show, Alan and Amy, with the stats of foster youth. We know that in our country, there are over 400,000 children in foster care here in the United States. And California is one of the largest states with foster youth. Right here in California, we have roughly about 48,000 children. I'm sorry, not 48,000, 68,000 children in foster care in California. Now, of the 68,000, about 47,000 of those youth are right here in Southern California, where all of us work, live, and breathe. And so when I think about that, when I think about having the largest portion of foster youth right here in my neighborhood, and I think about how many foster youth are being lured into this horror, it really just causes trepidation to me, a lot of fear, and I really want to bring awareness to it. So why am I focused on foster youth? Because what we all know from the research is the number one young person that's being lured into sex trafficking are foster children. Yeah. And that is a absolute horror to me. So one of the viewers asked me, how can children who are in protected services, how can these children find themselves lured into sex trafficking? Isn't the state watching? She asked, isn't there social worker watching? Isn't there more protection when you don't have the protection of your family? And I thought that was a great question to ask me. And that has to be one of the questions that so many Americans are asking themselves. Wait a minute, these children already don't have a mom or a dad. They're in the protected custody of our states, which means that they're in the protected custody of all of us, okay? Because the state becomes their mom or dad. So how do these children who need even more protection, how do they end up in sex trafficking? I want to ask that question. What would be your answer from your experience?
Well, from our case at Saving Innocence, we carry a client load, an active client load of minors who have been caught up in sex trafficking. And about 70% of our clients are coming out of the foster care system. And so, it's tragic and heartbreaking to know that the state has taken a kid out of a tough situation to protect them, and then they become even more vulnerable than they were before. And so in our case, what we see is, the fact that they're missing an intact family, a mom and a dad, and in most cases, a dad that's showing them what a healthy male looks like and showing them what unconditional love looks like, all those kinds of things that makes them even more vulnerable because now they're put in a place where they're not connected in any way to family. And then when, the bad guy enters her life and masquerades as someone giving love and affection and attention, she's more vulnerable than she ever was to yearn after the basic human needs of being loved and noticed and wanted that all of us in this room and every listener has. It's just when she's 12 or 13 or 14 years old, she doesn't have the ability to really sift through what's actually happening.
Right. The decision-making process, the cognitive thinking that goes with that. Right. It's shocking to hear 70% of the children at Saving Innocence comes from foster care.
Yeah, I would say that the same is accurate for Starview Community Services. For my team in particular, the majority of clients that come to my team who specialize in working with children who have been exposed to trauma, the majority of the referrals are from the Department of Mental Health or from DCFS, Children and Family Services. So they're already at risk, and then unfortunately, the majority of those children have also already been exposed to, different forms of childhood abuse, and the majority are childhood sexual abuse. So this is something that they've already been exposed to. They're already highly vulnerable. And one of the things that the girls tell us the most is that they're so desperate for family. They go into foster care, but they kind of see it as, this is someone who's being paid to take care of me.
So let's stop right there, Amy. This is someone that's being paid to take care of me. How does a young child even come to that decision? How does a young child even come to that? And I always on this show talk about the profitization of foster care. And that is horrible to me. And I always talk about on this show that foster children don't come into the foster care system from a day at the park or a day at Disneyland with their family. Right. So when I hear you say, they've already experienced trauma, that's how you come to foster care. Mm-hmm. If you didn't have trauma, if you didn't have abuse, neglect, or were abandoned, you would not be a foster child. Mm-hmm. So why is that the rhetoric that we hear about foster children? Well, they've experienced trauma. Duh. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They wouldn't be in foster care if they didn't. Yeah. It's like, so now what? That still cannot be their stigma. Like, you've experienced it, so you're at high risk. So what are we doing about it?
Well, the hard thing is that this is normal for them. So,
Is it normal, though?
It's their normal. It may not be what we see as normal, but that's what they know. That's what's familiar to them. That's what's, for lack of a better word, comfortable. They're used to violence and people taking advantage of them, people exploiting them, people being abusive, seeing, domestic violence or community violence.
And I would
they're
say
accustomed to poverty. So the sad thing is that this is their normal. This is what they're comfortable with.
I would say that that's what they experience. Because being a former foster child, even though I was homeless, I didn't think that that was the norm.
Right.
Even though my mother has schizophrenia, I didn't think that that was the norm. Yeah. I knew something was different. And even though I was 6, I couldn't articulate it, but I knew that something was different. And if you were to ask me if I was comfortable with that, I would say no. Yeah. I would say no. I would have to tell you I wasn't comfortable.
It's just all they know. It's what they know.
Right. And I knew that, but I also knew something different. Does that make sense? Yes. Because that's never what you see on television. Right. You never see a mom and 2 of her kids homeless as the cartoon. You never see a mom beating her kids on cartoons. Mm-hmm. You never see that at Disneyland. So the reason why you hear me talking about that a little bit is because sometimes when we deal with foster children, we say, that's all you know. But we also live in this society. And we also have all of those images that come from every other facet to compare to how we live. And when you go to preschool, is that what you hear? No, we didn't have any food last night. That's not what you hear at preschool. Mm-hmm. So that the reason why you hear a little pushback from me is because foster children do know something is not right with my family. And they're not really comfortable with it. It causes them a lot of trauma.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense? Like, they're uncomfortable in this situation, but it's a double-edged sword. You're uncomfortable, with the only person that you know. You're uncomfortable with a mom or your dad. And who tells on mommy and daddy? And if everybody else in the world, every other picture that I see in the world, you see the mom and the dad, and so that's going to happen to me too.
Yeah. That's their hope, that eventually it's going to change.
That's going to happen to me too.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to talk about that because as I work with a lot of professionals in the foster care system, I hear that a lot. That's all they know. They're comfortable with that. And that's why you hear me push back a little bit. We're not comfortable. It doesn't feel good.
Of course.
We know something is wrong here, but we can't articulate it the same way you can. We can't we know something is wrong, but we can't formulate a conclusion or a decision like you can.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Well, and a young foster child doesn't, even if they did have the courage to do something, they wouldn't know where to go to do it.
Right.
Who do you call? Where do you go? There's no one in their life that's kind of their advocate, if you will.
Right.
They
So
don't
And I
what do
used
you
to-
even do?
Yeah, and I used to feel that way being homeless.
Yeah.
Being homeless, and when you watch big people walk right past you.
Yeah.
If these are the same big people that are saying, I want to help you, do you know how many big people I saw walk right past me on the street? Do you know how many big people we heard say some of the most derogatory things about us?
Yeah.
And these are the same people we're supposed to turn around and trust?
Right.
Well, and then some of our kids, if they visit the emergency room because of their circumstances, and maybe to all of us, there would be obvious red flags.
Right.
But yet, in most cases, or many cases, the big people, the doctors and the nurses, didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Well, how come they didn't see it?
Right.
So they just learn not to trust
Right.
Right.
the
That's
adults in the
huge.
world.
Right.
That becomes a huge factor, I think, with this population is and how they get to that place like you were talking about. How do they get to a place where they're being exploited and trafficked? It's trust is probably one of the most profound factors is they start to not trust anybody, especially adults.
And that's why I have this show. That's why I want every adult. There is no such thing as a child prostitute.
Absolutely.
If you see a young person standing on the corner with her natural given organs and her breast out or some booty shorts, pull over. What in the world are you doing out here? Because that's why foster youth don't believe adults.
Right.
We watch it happen. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, we want to help you.
Yeah.
Do you know how many adults we drive by the street every day? And so that's why I want the community, I want our state, I want everybody to get involved in this.
There has to be awareness that it's happening domestically. I think that the myth is that it's worldwide and just foreign, but it's domestic. And California, unfortunately, is one of the main places where it's happening. And it's here in Compton. It's here in Inglewood. California is one of the main areas.
Yeah.
So
Right here in Southern California, you
Absolutely.
cannot walk down Long Beach Boulevard. You cannot walk down Figueroa.
Those are the two main ones.
There are known streets in our community where you're going to see young girls walking the street.
Long Beach Boulevard.
Long Beach
From
Boulevard.
Long Beach straight into Compton.
Exactly. So when we know this, where are we? And so when we say that foster youth don't trust, that's where that comes from.
Right.
We Dr. Marnia, we've had stories told to us of when one of these children becomes under the control of their pimp, the pimp has, on occasion, had one of his friends dress up like a cop, come to the door, and then beat and rape the child. And then the pimp can say, see, you can't even trust the law enforcement.
Right.
Yeah.
And so are they going to go to a cop?
Right. And then watch that play out every day on the streets of LA. On the streets of LA, go down Long Beach Boulevard, go down Figueroa, and how many police officers do you see chasing or trying to get those young girls off the street? And I don't want to have this show bash law enforcement because we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But foster youth live right here in our community. And when we say we are a community that cares, I really hear them when they say, really? Really?
I will say that tide is turning in a big way, though, behind
Yeah.
the scenes. And so I don't know if you mean later in this show or just later
Yeah,
in
later
the
in the
calendar.
show, we're
Okay.
going to talk
Sure.
about
I wanna
law
come back to
enforcement.
that
Yeah, we
because-
have
We're gonna-
seen huge growth.
There's some great
within
things going
Oh
on.
local
yeah,
law
I mean
enforcement.
we've come from the point where we're only at the time of an act with a minor, the minor would get arrested,
Right.
and the John would get $100 fine and walk away.
like traffic school.
Yeah, like traffic
Yeah.
school. So we've come a long way with law enforcement. So
Yeah.
I don't want this to be
Right.
a bash on law enforcement. This is not an indictment of law enforcement. This is really an indictment of our community, of our country.
Yeah.
If there are 400,000 children in foster care, somebody's got to pay attention. Does that make sense? So now let's talk about the pimps a little bit. How do these young children who are in protective services get lured in? Describe for us what they call the gorilla pimp. Who is that person?
So the gorilla pimp, and let's just be clear. These pimps are very sophisticated. This is a very sophisticated $300 million a year industry, and that's what it is. It's a business.
Yes.
Make no bones about it. It's about money and business. So for the gorilla pimps, they're usually the ones that are kind of either stalking the girls. They might be luring them in through social media. They may set up a date with them. They may either have somebody talking to them on social media who may or may not be who they are.
Right.
Lures them to a point, and then they may kidnap them, sexually assault them, and then that's their kind of into human sex trafficking. It's a lot more violent than what we would call the Romeo pimp, who kind of works on romancing them and grooming them.
Or the Casanova pimp. But he starts off as a Casanova pimp.
Yeah,
It doesn't turn violent until halfway in.
right. And they're
Right.
very savvy. They're very savvy.
So if you're a foster youth and you can hear the sound of my voice, and you're sitting at home and you're on Snapchat or Facebook or any form of social media, and you put out there to the world, I'm sitting at home by myself. I don't think that no one likes me. And that could be your true feeling. But I want you to be aware that there are predators in our society, that when you post something like that, they are looking for certain words in your post that they're going to then send you a friend request or ask you to start to Snapchat you or start to join your social network. And they're going to say the kindest thing that you've ever heard. You're not by yourself. I'm here with you. I also want someone to love me. Wouldn't it feel good to be loved? They're going to say those wonderful, whatever words you think, wow, can somebody say that to me? They're going to say that.
And it's coming from a male. For a lot of these girls, they don't have father figures. So what they want more than anything else is family. And they haven't grown up with father figures. So, that becomes their father figure or their boyfriend or, somebody older that, can take them in.
Right. And another feeling about that is protection.
Absolutely.
Finally, here's this man that shows up. Not only is he going to love me, but I'm going to have the protection of a man. So all this stuff that's happened to me in foster care, finally somebody's going to, a man can fix it. A man is a protector. I hear that in school.
Yeah.
I hear that all over our society. So if you have a man, you have protection. I hear that a lot from a lot of girls, that it's not just the love. It's finally you have somebody to stand there who is a man, who is supposed to do what?
Take care of you.
Protect your being.
Protect you.
Protect your being.
And there is an actual reality of protection. So much of this has moved into the gang culture.
Yeah.
And so that's the new family.
Yes.
And there is actual protection to be in that group. And so
Exactly.
that's a reality for a lot of them. It's for a lot of kids in the inner city, it's more dangerous not to be in a gang than it is to actually be in the gang in some ways.
In some ways, yes.
But and one thing I might insert this though, that I wouldn't want your listeners to think this is only an inner city urban problem.
Right.
Right.
It's not.
A large percentage of it is for sure, because that's where most of the vulnerability really shows itself. But there's a large number of kids from the suburbs, from the nicest communities in our country,
yeah.
in Los Angeles, that are lured in. I heard recently one of the sheriffs said that the smartphone has become the 21st century brothel.
Exactly.
That it's the technology is facilitating this in a
Tated.
big way, and that penetrates the suburban communities
yes.
in a huge way.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. So if you're in Southern California, if you're in Lancaster, Altadena, Pasadena, San Bernardino, Riverside, if you're in Pacoima, if you're all of these communities.
Malibu, Brentwood.
Malibu,
Orange
Brentwood, Orange County, Anaheim, Huntington Beach, Seal Beach.
Absolutely.
Any of these communities are known communities to us who work with sex trafficking. We have tons of kids that come straight from beach communities.
Absolutely.
From Malibu, from Huntington Beach, Seal Beach, Newport Beach, straight from the beach community right into sex trafficking. So thank you for that, Alan, because this is not a Los Angeles, Watts, Compton, Long Beach issue. Foster children don't just live in those parts of our city either. And it doesn't happen just to foster kids in group homes.
Right.
It happens to foster kids who are with foster parents.
Yes.
Well, and non-foster kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so now we're going to take, I know I'm way past my break, but we got all involved in this
excited.
conversation. We're going to take a short commercial break and we'll come back. My name is Dr. Anissa McNeil. I do the work and I tell the stories of foster youth. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Education Works Consulting Firm provides foster youth education services. We work to make sure that every foster youth has a chance by providing a way through education. Please visit us at edworks4u.org or call our offices at 213-634-0044. Education works for all of us. The Unstoppable Awards is a nonprofit organization that provides scholarships to foster youth. If you are a foster youth graduating from high school and live in Los Angeles, Orange, Riverside, or San Bernardino County, we'd like to offer a scholarship to you if you have a 2.3 to 3.2 GPA, you've overcome some significant challenges, and you've been accepted to a college, university, or trade school. Please visit our website at www.unstoppableawards.org or call our office at 213-634-0044. We'd like to help you. We'd like to make you unstoppable. Right Way Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that supports transition-age foster youth throughout the Los Angeles County. Our goal is to reduce the homelessness and unemployment rates and to increase the high school graduation and college enrollment rates. We do this by providing individual case management and mental health services to each participant to increase their self-sufficiency. To get involved, please visit our website at www.therightwayfoundation.org or call our office at 323-903-5021. The Hair Garden, where we grow hair from the roots, is a full-service hair salon and supplies located at 40119 Marietta Hot Springs Road, number 103C, Marietta, California. We are open on Mondays through Saturdays from 9 to 6 p.m. Come in and purchase your hair supplies or receive a full hair service or let us restore your hair. We have weekly specials. Call The Hair Garden at 951-698-8444 or visit our website at www.therightwayfoundation.org.
www.hairgardenmarietta.com. That's www.hairgardenmarietta.com. We look forward to seeing you. Happy holidays.
We're back with Foster to Foster with your host, Dr. Anissa McNeil. Welcome back to Foster Radio Show. I'm Dr. Anissa McNeil, and I'm in the studio this morning with Alan Smith and Amy Brasher.
Good morning.
Now we've had this wonderful conversation about the gorilla pimp, but there is a pimp that has far more power than a gorilla pimp. Most of our young people who are involved in sex trafficking want to get away from this gorilla pimp as fast as they can. Let's talk a little bit more about the Casanova pimp. Who is he?
I think most of our kids or folks would refer to him more as a Romeo pimp, but I know what you mean. Same
Yes.
idea. From what we've seen, we've already talked about the vulnerability of these children and how they're searching for love and acceptance and protection and all those things. And in walks in this young man, maybe as young as 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, still trying to figure it out. And if the missing father issue is true for the young ladies, it's also true for the young men.
Yes.
So this young man has typically not had a father figure guiding him and giving him the right directions. And so he's seeing what's been done around him. And he's going to walk into this young girl's life and masquerade as somebody who loves her, a would-be boyfriend, a would-be life partner, and starts giving the sweet talk and maybe actually giving her some things and maybe giving her a little necklace. And before long, he says that he loves her. And boy, that feels good to a 14-year-old girl who hasn't had a boy or a man say that he loves her maybe ever.
Right, exactly.
And she goes down that path of that relationship. And, at some point, he says, we're going to have a life together. Right. We're going to run away. We're going to have a house and a dog and a porch, but we need to make a bunch of money to do that. Exactly. I got just a plan for us.
Exactly.
And away they go.
And away they go. And I want to talk about something that I had the horror of experiencing. I was working with a young foster male, and he was transitioning out of the foster care system. And he said to me very boldly, Dr. McNeil, if I don't make it in college, don't worry about me. I'm going to go get 4 bitches and I'll make it. Yeah. So if you can hear the sound of my voice, hurt people hurt other people. And it saddens my heart to know that other foster youth are now luring other foster youth into sex trafficking. A life is nothing to play with. They're not, I'm going to go get me 4 bitches and put them on the street. I'll make money that way. And I said to him, what a horror. Yeah. What a horror that you, as a person who have had no one in your life, would subject 4 other people to that. Well, all you have, and that's exactly what he said to me. All you got to do is say you love them, buy them something, get their nails done. Doc, it's not that hard.
Yeah.
Well, and each one of these little girls under his control would represent $200,000 to $250,000 a year of tax-free revenue.
Yes.
So that's a pretty compelling argument for this young foster youth to put $1 million of cash in his pocket every year.
Right. So let's talk about this thing called a quota. Because each girl that is lured, or male, because males are lured into sex trafficking as well, each one of them is given a quota. Yeah. What is that?
So a lot of times what happens is they aren't able to come back until they meet their quota. So if it's $1,500 a night, they don't get to eat, they don't get to sleep, they don't get to come back. It doesn't matter what the weather is, it doesn't matter how tired they are, it doesn't matter how hungry they are. They can't come back until they meet their quota. And just to be clear, they don't get to keep this money.
Right.
You just want to make it clear. I think there's some misconceptions that they get to keep the money, that they don't. It all goes to their pimp. So until they meet their quota, they don't get to come home and see the family, what they call it, the fam.
Exactly.
So, it's a lot of them are sleep deprived, and sleep deprivation makes you do things that you wouldn't normally do. And then a lot of times that's where sometimes the substance use comes in, because they, in order to keep them awake for extended period of time, they'll supply them with drugs.
Yes.
So, and then that's where the addiction kind of cycle begins as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And some of the young people that I've talked to, talked about what a relief the drugs were. That
Sure.
sometimes I'm so out of my mind, I don't even know what's happening.
I mean, if you
And so it's a double horror. Now I'm going to lure you into being sex trafficked, and now I'm going to make you a drug addict. It's two battles all in one for young people who they're in the midst of their teenage life.
right.
They're in the midst of trying to figure out, who am I? Is red really my color? Is blue really my color? Do I look better with long hair, short hair? How many friends do I have? All of the things that go on in a middle school or a teenager's mind is still going on in this young person's mind,
Well,
but with the horror of sex trafficking.
and if you think about it, if you've got a girl, and the majority of them do have a history of sexual abuse, rape, and trauma, they're experiencing symptoms of PTSD. They're having an intrusive and distressing thoughts. They're having flashbacks and nightmares and all these things. I when I do trainings and I speak to people, I think, I'd want to be high too.
Right.
I would want to be numb also, than have to re-experience these types of traumas, whether it's during the act with the Johns or it's going home and trying to sleep that night. I'd
Right.
want to numb out too.
Right.
And so it makes sense.
And that's the sad part about it.
It's very tragic.
Now there's also, this is a very sophisticated horror. It involves two types of pimps, a Romeo pimp and a gorilla pimp. But there's also a bottom bitch. Who is that person? What is the function of the bottom bitch?
Well, I mean, she's basically working for the pimp in a way of recruiting and kind of, in a nice way to say it, sort of giving leadership, if you will, over these other girls. Yeah. And so
She forms the gang.
she's part of that, and in some ways, initially maybe be more trustworthy than some older guy. And what does he want? But a girl that looks about the same age and can kind of be part of that recruiting process. My wife works in a charter school, a school for kids that haven't quite able to make it in the regular public school, and they had one of these girls there recruiting other kids, just looked like any other regular student,
Right.
and she was recruiting to join her employer.
Yeah.
Really nice way to say it.
Yeah.
I know there's FCC rules that I got to be careful of.
Yeah.
I'm thinking different things right
like
now.
that. Yes. And that's the horror in our everyday schools. This bottom bitch, it doesn't come to school with a T-shirt. Hi, I'm the bottom bitch.
No.
Welcome.
They, it's like it's sophisticated and it's savvy, and they'll. This is one of the newer forms, or I would say not so much newer, but the bigger forms of recruiting is they'll send her into schools. They'll send her into after-school programs.
To group homes.
They'll send her to group homes.
The mall.
Mall.
Bus stops. I mean, they're canvassing everywhere.
Chat groups. The chat group that's led by this one person and that one person is the bottom bitch. What do they call it when they all meet up somewhere? That person who's organizing, let's all do this. That person is the bottom bitch. So many tactics. That person is young. That person speaks their language. That person looks like them. Rather, this is a community. We're in one of our beach communities where tattoos and piercings are more significant, or if it's another community with the sagging, they look just like our everyday teen. You would not be able to walk into a room and say, it's you, Anissa, who's the bottom bitch. You wouldn't. And that's what makes this so sophisticated and hard to really corner until they display those things at school. And thank goodness your wife has that information and was like, wow, I know what this is. But just imagine how many high school principals or assistant principals don't have that information, and they don't know that this young girl is recruiting for an employer that's really a pimp.
Yeah.
Right, for sure.
And they don't walk into school and say, hi, I'm recruiting for my pimp today. You want to work for us? It doesn't work that way. And that person, the bottom bitch, also folds this person into this I hate to use this word, but this community where the young person who's being lured into sex trafficking feels like they have a family.
Absolutely.
And they call it fam. Now I'm in this community, loosely used, and I have this family, loosely used, and this is what we do. How sick is that? How sick is that?
Very sick.
And so that takes us back, that circles us back to our question. How can this happen to children who are in protected services? It takes me to the larger question that we can start to talk about law enforcement when we introduce this topic. Who are the Johns? If this is a $300 million industry and no child is a prostitute, who are the Johns? They're not aliens that dawn upon the earth every day and utilize these young people. They're our neighbors. They're our community members. That's the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
If this is a $300 million industry, who in the world is having sex with these young children?
You know, I had a professor at UCLA who runs a social work program, is on our board of directors, and she walked me through kind of an example that made a lot of sense at one point. She said that, you know, a lot of these Johns, and I don't even like that term. Let's just call them rapists.
Yeah.
But a lot of these rapists, they're like regular people, regular guys in your community, and then they've gone down a little rabbit hole of pornography, and they're seeing something on their computer that they get a little bit addicted to. And then they would like to try some of the stuff that they're seeing, but their wife is like, "What are you talking about? Are you crazy?" No. And so he builds up this little perverted fetish, if you will, and so now he has to go and explore and satisfy that, and goes looking for ways to do that. And because his otherwise intact marriage, on the surface anyway, is not going to have any part of it, and so he's going to go looking to satisfy that addiction some other place, and that sort of experiment somewhere else.
With children.
And that's the word I want to use about these young people, is that they are children
They are children.
being raped by adults right in our community, right on our streets. We use this word sex trafficking, which makes us think, well, what is this? And so now let's just use basic words, basic vocabulary. Children are being raped by grown men and women right here in our country for money.
A child cannot give consent to sex with an adult. End of story.
End of story. No child stands up in kindergarten. Hi, Anissa. What do you want to be when you grow up? A prostitute. I want to have a pimp.
Right.
I want to live on the street.
Yeah.
I want to be hungry. I want to be a drug addict. How many times have we heard that in preschool, in elementary school, or kindergarten? Or even if a child even said anything like that, we would rush to have Child Protective Services come and say, how do you even know these words?
Right.
Does that make sense?
You know, I think also just to add another little shade to who this rapist is, they all aren't necessarily looking for minors. Those are just the most vulnerable, the most easily controlled by the pimps. And so when they go online, possibly to, you know, set an appointment and buy a girl, they don't necessarily know that who they're getting is underage. Maybe they're really looking for that, but they're setting up an appointment to go have this interlude with this person, and then he gets there and she's really young. He may or may not even feel all that comfortable with it, but he paid his money and there he is, and so he's going to live out his ugly fetish. So they aren't all necessarily looking for children. Those are just the highest population of these kids being trafficked because they're easily vulnerable.
I wish, Alan, I was as kind as you are, but I am not. So I really don't understand why a grown person, no matter what your desires are, you enter a room and you see a child, You see a baby and you still commit this sexual act with a child or a baby? No, I'm not buying it.
Well, I'm not excusing it one bit. I'm just
No.
letting you know how some of it happens.
I'm just saying, where are the handcuffs? Where is the bottom of the prison? Because that's where you need to be.
I had lunch this week with a survivor. She's an older woman now, and she talked about the fact that she was first raped at 7 years old and was never able to have children because her uterus has been crushed through all of her trauma. And so that's the other part that I think people aren't necessarily fully grasping onto. Of course, we can imagine a lot of emotional damage and trauma that would take a lifetime to heal from, the PTSD. But when you're talking about a child, a very young child, we're talking about physical harm that they will never recover from,
Exactly.
which is another tragedy upon tragedy.
Yeah.
Right. You've changed the trajectory of their life. You've changed the trajectory of their life.
Yeah.
And so if you are a young person and you can hear our voice today, if you think to yourself, I have a question about this new person in my life. Even if you just have a question or there's some feeling on the inside of you like, I want you to call 1-888-373-7888 and just tell the other person on the other end what you feel about this other person. I just feel like they're being kind to me. I don't really know why, but they're being nice to me and they want to meet up with me. That is the nationwide sex trafficking number. And even if you have a feeling and you say, well, talk to me now, I don't want to call sex trafficking. Call and tell your feeling to 1-800-540-4000. That's the number to DCFS right here in our community. And you report to the other person online, this is what I feel. This is where I am. I'm in this group home. I'm here. And this person on my Snapchat is saying that they love me and we're going to have sex on Wednesday. I'm a little nervous about that. That's all you need to say. And you can say even less than that. I think something is happening to me and I'm afraid. Period. If you can't remember those numbers, you can simply call 211. 211. And report who you are and that you need help. So again, those numbers are 1-888-373-7888. That's the nationwide sex trafficking number. Or you can call our local DCFS at 1-800-540-4000 or simply call 211 and get assistance. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to know what's going to happen. You don't have to know that this person is a gorilla pimp, a Romeo pimp, a bottom bitch. You don't have to know any of that. What you have to know is something feels uncomfortable to me. I don't understand it. And that's all you have to say. You don't have to know anything else. So now I want to have a call of action. As we go to the end of our show today, we started off talking about some of the mistrust that foster youth has with adults in our community and where the origin of some of that mistrust comes from. So if I'm an adult and I hear this show, how can I get involved? What can I do to stop this horror from happening? Nothing fancy, just right here where I live, right here where I work. What can I do?
Well, one of the things that we really promote in different communities is that some of the local communities have human trafficking task forces. So if you're in the Long Beach area or surrounding areas, there's a Long Beach Human Trafficking Task Force. I'm in the steering committee for the Compton Human Trafficking Task Force, and then there's also an LA County Regional. And they welcome community members, and that's, as if you're a local person, you're just not sure where to start. That would be a great place to start.
How do they get involved with one of the task force? What would they need
They
to
can
do?
show up to a meeting.
Okay.
Go online and look it up, and look up Compton Human Trafficking Task Force or Long Beach, and they all have monthly meetings. I think Long Beaches are the first Thursday of the month. I think at the Salvation Army in Long Beach, Compton Human Trafficking Task Force is the third Friday of the month at Shields for Families, and the LA County Regional rotates.
Okay.
But that's a great way for just people who are just not sure what to do, but they know they want to help. That's a great way to join in.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And I would say that those are all great, but if you're not quite ready to get in your car and drive somewhere, there's a lot of resources online. And I say step one is begin to get a little bit educated as to what's happening so your antenna can be up. In fact, I think it was just yesterday, or really recently, a major report, a major study was just put out by the Thorn Report.
Yes.
Ashton Kutcher, a couple years ago, is a co-founder of this nonprofit that's focusing on technology, and we actually contributed. Saving Innocence is one of the contributors with the studies and things to bring them some of their data. And I just glanced at it quickly yesterday, but there's a ton of tremendous information to see what's happening, how it's happening. So I'd say for all of your listeners, let's begin to get knowledgeable so we can notice it, and then we're ready to do something, whatever that might be.
I think awareness.
Right.
I think that's perfect.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk
Awareness.
about that. We're going to really go into depth of the Thorn Report on my next show.
Oh, good.
But if you are at work and you see something going on, just look shady. A child is in front of my building dressed up like a prostitute. Call law enforcement. Make them aware of it. I was driving to work, and there's a young person on this corner and that corner, and she's dressed up like a prostitute. Call law enforcement. Call 211. Start to ring the alarm in your community. Notify your employer. Do you know that when I came to work this morning, right in front of our door is a young person that's standing there? If you're the employer, call your city council, call your community boards, call everyone to say, hey, there's a group of young people on my corner, right in front of my establishment, and they look as if they're engaging in prostitution. Children are engaging in prostitution in front of my business. Every adult, if you have a smartphone, a cell phone, a work phone, notify anybody. Just tell anybody that you have access to. Why are these children in front of our building, on our street, engaged in prostitution? And keep calling until something happens. I have one colleague. She drives down Figueroa every day on her way to work. And she said, I couldn't take the images. It's horrible to drive down Figueroa in the morning and to see these young children out here on the street. So I decided to take a different route. And yes, that's one solution. But if you're taking that different route because you don't want to see the horror on the street, as you get into your car, alert the police. Hi, I'm not driving down Figueroa today because there's these children are out there. Did you know the children are out there prostituting? Is anything being done? Because I think the more that the community asks what is being done as we see it happening, things will begin to happen. And I know that there's this myth that as one person, you cannot change anything. I don't believe that. I believe that if enough of us start to sound the alarm, something will happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's an important distinction you just said, is that we wouldn't recommend that a private citizen goes up to try to
Right.
intervene.
Yeah.
That's
No.
going to put the young girl in danger possibly with her pimp. So
Right.
that's a good word. Call the cops immediately. And the other part is, this is a national, forget global, it is global, but this is a national crisis.
Right.
So in order to get around and remedy a national crisis, we need a national uprising.
Right.
So we need everybody
Everybody.
out there to do whatever it is that they can do. I have
Exactly.
people ask me all the time, well, what can I do? I'm saying, what can you do? Who do you know? What do you know?
No.
What's your company? What's your business? What's your education? Who are your friends? What do they know? Who do they know? We need
Exactly.
everybody to grab a little piece, and then we can get rid of this whole thing. It needs to be go away, completely gone, done.
It will be completely gone.
Yeah.
And just imagine if we had every person who drives down Figueroa every day
made a
calling the
phone call?
police.
Yeah.
There would be no children on
And
Figueroa.
most local law enforcement agencies, at least in LA, they're actually doing really good work and they're making huge
Yes.
strides. And they will have a human trafficking unit. Long Beach has one, Compton has one, LA has one. So maybe if you're not sure, call the local human trafficking
Right.
unit for that local law enforcement.
And what does
you'll
law-
get some support.
Absolutely, Amy. And what does law enforcement need? They need our help.
Right.
They need the community's help to say, hey, what's going on? We're waiting for the police to police our communities, but communities can police their communities. No child can stand in front of my house and engage in prostitution. I'm going to call law enforcement every day. I'm going to take pictures of the car. I'm going to police my own community and not put myself in danger or the young person, but I'm going to let it be known that in this community, that's not allowed.
Right.
And as soon as everyone in this country who gets voted in understands unless they fix us, they're going to get voted out, right? Until the country links arms and says, we're going to put people in elected offices who are going to focus on this issue. They're not going to focus on it.
Right.
Right.
They're going to focus on other stuff
Exactly.
that the other people are threatening them with.
And that's why I'm asking every person to care. I'm asking every person to care because if I care, that influences how I vote. If I care, that influences who becomes the sheriff in my city. If I care, that influences how foster youth see adults. If we want to break this cycle that children don't trust us.
Children who run away, whether it's foster care, their own homes, they're in abusive environments, they're at risk for being recruited within 48 hours of running away.
Yes.
Within 48 hours, they're at risk because these guys know what they're looking for. They're
Exactly.
looking for that girl walking by herself, looking vulnerable and sad, and they just know. They just
Exactly.
know.
Exactly. I heard a little bit less than that. We have less than 48 hours. When when a foster youth leaves their group home, their foster home, their school, we have less than 48 hours to find that child, or that child could be lured into sex trafficking and is somewhere far distant.
Yeah.
And so if that is the case, we need a community that's on alert, just on alert for children, on alert for children in our society. No child gets to say, this is who I want for my parent. I want Amy to be my mom. I want Alan to be my dad. They're my parents, and that's who I'm going to have. No child gets that privilege. We get who we get.
Yeah.
And if you happen to be like me and you have parents who can't care for you, then what is your life trajectory? And that's what I'm after to stop. I believe that they should be able to live the dream that they want to live and do whatever it is that they want to do. Because whatever's happened to them in their lives is happening to them not because of something that they did, simply because they had the mom or the dad that they had.
Yeah.
And none of us get to choose. I want to thank you so much for coming back to be on this show. And as per usual, you bring such wonderful information and you can help our entire community. Thank you, Amy, for
Thank
being here
you.
today. Thank you, Alan, for being here today.
My pleasure.
Wonderful. My name is Dr. Anissa McNeil. If you are a young person and you have an ailing feeling that something wrong is happening to you, please call 1-888-373-7888 or call 1-800-540-4000 or 211. My name is Dr. Anissa McNeil. I do the work and I tell the stories of foster youth. Please be sure to join us in 2 weeks here on Foster to Foster Radio Show.